Traffic Center time. Here's Jim Telemonte.
In Wakanda, a crash with injuries as 176 closed over Rand Road. Delays on the inbound Kennedy starting at Cumberland. 30 minutes O'Hare to downtown, outbound 23. Edens is 26 minutes Lake Hook to the junction. Eisenhower 38 minutes 390 to downtown, outbound 41. Stevenson now 54 minutes 355 to Lakeshore Drive, outbound 38. Ryan is 26 minutes 95th to downtown. I-57 18 minutes 80 to the merge, Bishop 428. The northbound tri-state is packed solid 95th to the Stevenson with a collision in the right lane. See delays on eastbound I-80 from Gallagher to 30. That's traffic. I'm Jim Telemonte on AM 560 The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast from the 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center. Sunny and beautiful today, high 70. 52 at O'Hare. Next news at 7. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Papa Nicholas Coffee. Papa Nicholas, best beans, best roast, best coffee.
Another Hammer classic. Did you prefer him as Hammer or MC Hammer?
I like MC Hammer.
I like Leroy Burrell. Or Stanley Burrell. Stanley Burrell, right?
Get it right,
Stanley Burrell. Yeah. This interesting decision from the FISA court, on surveillance that was announced yesterday, and the timing couldn't be more relevant. Make this decision more relevant. Some of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's electronic surveillance activities violated the constitutional privacy rights of Americans swept up in a controversial foreign intelligence program. That's what a FISA court ruled. It's a rebuke to U.S. spying programs that have generally withstood legal challenge and review since they were dramatically expanded after 9/11. Intelligence community disclosing that the FISA court found that the FBI's efforts to search data about Americans ensnared in warrantless internet surveillance program intended to target foreign suspects violated the law authorizing the program, as well as, that old thing, the Constitution, Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches. Well, golly gee, and this after Jim Clapper famously lied to the American public about the surveillance, the domestic surveillance program. Gosh, I wonder if that will be instructive in terms of what may be forthcoming from the DOJ IG look-see at the FISA applications associated with the Mueller investigation and forthcoming Durham report as well. Well, I know a gentleman who knows something about improper government surveillance. His name is James Rosen. He is a nationally syndicated investigative reporter with the Sinclair Broadcast Group, and he is the New York Times bestselling author of the book The Strong Man, John Mitchell and the Secrets of Watergate. Our old friend James Rosen, by way of Rockford, joins us now. James, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Dan and Amy, it's so good to be back with you. Thank you for your kindness in inviting me back.
Of course, and refresh everybody's recollection about your experience with the government keeping track of what James Rosen was up to.
This was back under the last regime. In 2013, it was disclosed, and I learned along with everyone else from the Washington Post that some years earlier, the Justice Department, under the leadership at the time of President Obama and Attorney General Eric Holder, had designated me secretly, without my knowing as much, to be a criminal co-conspirator in an alleged violation of the Espionage Act for reporting classified information for Fox News, my employer at the time, relating to North Korea's nuclear weapons program. This was the first time in American history, and to date the only time that we know of in American history, where a working reporter for doing his job had been designated a criminal by the federal government. Not even the Nixon administration had thusly designated Neil Sheehan, the New York Times reporter who had published the Pentagon Papers, 7,000 pages of classified materials relating to the Vietnam War. So it was a historic moment. Yours truly, briefly, was the number one trending subject on Twitter,
Oh, boy.
outpacing my fellow celebrities Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift. And
Sure.
ultimately, the Attorney General, Eric Holder, admitted responsibility for it, said it was the biggest mistake of his tenure as Attorney General, and some procedural reforms at DOJ over how the department treats reporters in national security leak investigations were enacted.
Well, what
Pretty
information-
succinct
I know.
summary, no?
That's very good.
Very
and
good.
I would challenge only your use of your name in the same sentence as Bieber and Taylor Swift. But otherwise, I think your story holds
No,
up.
he trended higher than they did. Well, what information did you have on North Korea?
At the time, I reported a number of different stories. One related to what was then the succession plan that resulted in Kim Jong-un being installed as the leader of North Korea upon the death of his father. We had at the time reported classified signals intelligence where the regime in Pyongyang was sending out directives to its mission in the United Nations and elsewhere that the U.S. Intelligence agencies had intercepted, showing that Kim Jong-un was the anointed one. There was also the main report, I think, that got all of this going, which reported that President Obama had been briefed earlier that day on what intelligence agencies were saying would be the likely response from North Korea if the United States slapped new sanctions on North Korea in response to its most recent nuclear test. It's worth pointing out that the government identified someone whom they believed was my source. That person was interrogated by the aforementioned FBI, and to avoid the long and debilitating costs of a trial, that individual eventually pleaded guilty and served a prison sentence in connection with all of this. So it was a very serious matter. And anyone who would criticize the Trump administration for its relations with the news media, and of course there is a lot there worth criticizing, nonetheless ought to remember the treatment of the press under the Obama administration.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's exactly where I was going to go. It's remarkable. It's almost like you were treated as an enemy of the state. Dare I utter that phrase? But something else too. It also goes to the D.C. Press Corps' newfound attitude towards the machinery of the state and these spy agencies, law enforcement agencies that they're supposed to be skeptical of, not antagonistic, but skeptical. And now they're in full amplification and celebration mode. John Brennan and Jim Clapper and James Comey are all national heroes. They are our new founding fathers because of their antagonism towards President Trump. And that suspension of skepticism with respect to those individuals and the agencies they formerly headed, I find troubling. What about you?
I don't know that the national, or let's say the Beltway press corps is lionizing James Comey. I mean, it is from the New York Times and the Washington Post that we tend to get our news about what happened to James Comey, and it isn't pretty. Two successive Inspector General reports from the Department of Justice had very critical things to say about James Comey's leadership of the FBI, both in terms of his handling of the Hillary Clinton email server case and his handling of classified memoranda that he drafted memorializing his conversations with President Trump. And the Inspector General for the Department of Justice concluded that Mr. Comey violated FBI protocols, his own employment agreement, and so forth, and set a very bad precedent for the 35,000 other FBI employees.
Yeah.
We tend to learn this from the same organs that we're citing. Nonetheless, there is a palpable hatred of President Trump that is widespread throughout the mainstream media. I've never saw it as a luxury for myself as a working journalist to depart from objectivity with respect to anybody I've covered, whether it's Hillary Clinton, whether it's Donald Trump. These are the players before us. They are either the duly chosen nominee for their party or the duly elected president of the United States. Barack Obama, same thing. And it's just not a luxury I have to just jettison objectivity. Whoever they are, they deserve our respect and they deserve our fair coverage, and that's how I've always tried to approach it.
Well, just as a make good, though, yeah, hey, Jim, we got to report on these IG reports on you, but here's the make good. CBS is going to option your book for a movie where Brendan Gleeson will be Trump, and let's see, Jeff Daniels will be you, and it's going to be great, and you'll make a bunch of money.
You know what this reminds me of, though? I'll tell you what. On the final night of the Nixon presidency, Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor at the time, holding both hats, went over to the White House to commiserate with President Nixon, who earlier that night had announced his resignation on television, which would become effective the next day. It was a very emotional meeting. Nixon, at one point, suggested they get down on their knees in the Oval Office carpet and pray, saying to him, as has been reported anyway, you're not much of a Jew, Henry, and I'm not much of a Quaker, but I think we should pray.
Yeah, right.
And Kissinger, trying to console the president, said, Mr. President, history will remember you much more kindly than your contemporaries. And Nixon said, that, Henry, depends on who's writing the history. And so, as we know, the mainstream media and Hollywood and so on, which tend to be dominated by people on the left, they write the history. They make the miniseries. They make the shows that we binge watch. And so that's how history, unfortunately, will record a lot of this. But again, in defense of some of my friends here and colleagues here in the Beltway press corps, it was the New York Times that broke the story about Hillary Clinton's email server in the first place, and gave her endless trouble for the next 2 years, and she would say helped damage her bid for the presidency. So I don't think we want to make sweeping judgments about the Beltway press corps and so on. But I do think there is a palpable hatred of this president that exceeds even that which attended President Nixon or Dick Cheney or any other unpopular right-wing figure of the past 50 or 60 years.
Now, we heard your Kissinger impersonation and your Nixon impersonation. Now do David Frost.
And now, for goodness knows how long, the first time in front of an audience, the Beatles.
It's not bad off the cuff. That's not bad. That's not bad off the cuff.
That's from when they played Hey Jude on his program, September 4, 1968. Who remembers?
Wow.
That's pretty good. I don't think you should limit yourself to reporting. I think James Rosen, yes, nationally syndicated investigative reporter, but also one-man show, maybe open for the Capitol steps or something.
I will have you know that in high school and college and beyond, to make money, and so that I never had to work at the mall like some of my friends, I used to do caricatures at weddings and bar mitzvahs and sweet 16s. I got $100 an hour. I don't know why I left that, frankly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe because as a result of that kind of activity and all those types of parties, I can actually swear under affidavit to this. I have heard the song "Celebration" by Kool and the Gang more than any other living American.
What's your best character that you played? Can you give us a little taste?
Oh, you mean impersonations?
Take us back.
And stuff?
Impersonation, yes.
Well, there's a certain fondness for my De Niro, I will say.
Oh, yeah.
Keep it clean.
Joey, you're very smart. You got to get the nose breathing, right? Listen, you give me all these answers, but you don't give me the right answers. So my axes again, Joey. Because I swear to God, I'm going to kill somebody. All right, that's enough of that, I think.
That's pretty good.
No,
Raging Bull,
really...
please tell me we got this.
That's pretty good.
You're very
pretty good. I completely
brilliant.
Got it. I mean, it's just, you have to suspend everything you've heard from De Niro and seen on the screen from him for the last 15 years or so. That's the only problem. Before we let you go, one more serious question, and I know you have a bar mitzvah or wedding to get off to.
We barely talked. We didn't even talk about the impeachment case.
That's what
we were going to do.
That's what I want to talk to you about. Impeachment in secret. The Wall Street Journal opining on the topic and suggesting the extraordinary rendition for the whistleblower and the histrionics the Democrats are engaged in, the unwillingness to have a House floor vote. They want to ramrod this through in secret without Republican participation or any essential cross-examination. How do you suss that out?
Well, I think that's factually correct. This is hardball stuff. These are not the president's friends. And the fact is the White House has been complaining that the House Democrats have not staged a vote on the full House floor to authorize an impeachment inquiry. But guess what? There's nothing in the Constitution that binds them to do so. It just happens to be the precedent that was followed in the Nixon and Clinton cases. The president, and for his part, is also playing hardball. His counsel has written to the House Democrats to say, in essence, we are not going to participate in this impeachment inquiry in any way. The White House cooperated with the Mueller probe in terms of making witnesses available, hundreds of thousands of documents, even as the president routinely trashed Robert Mueller on Twitter and in other forums. But they did cooperate with the probe. Now they are deciding they're not going to cooperate with this impeachment probe, and that's going to set up its own article of impeachment, obstruction of Congress, which was one of the 3 of the 5 articles of impeachment that was approved against President Nixon back in the 1970s, obstruction of Congress. So this is hard-edged stuff. Polls are starting to show from various sources that there is some appetite for impeachment on the part of the American public. But I think as we go forward, the president will have a compelling point to make that we're a year away and soon less than a year away from an election. Let's just settle this at the ballot box. And I think that that will be compelling to some large segments of the electorate.
He is James Rosen when he's not doing family reunions or neighborhood block parties. He's a nationally syndicated investigative reporter for the Sinclair Broadcast Group, also the best-selling author of Strongman, John Mitchell and the Secrets of Watergate. James, thanks as always for joining us.